The sky over the city of Seoul was a clean, bright blue. It was a normal morning. People were going to work. Children were going to school. The city hummed with its usual life. Then the sky broke. It did not crack like thunder. It ripped. A terrible purple light appeared high above the clouds. The light spread out like a sick flower, and the sound that followed was a deep groaning roar that shook the windows of every building. 1 tier became 5, then 10, then 12. They were holes in the sky itself. From these purple holes, ships began to appear. They were not human ships. They were jagged and dark, like pieces of broken rock or the shells of giant evil insects. They were huge and countless, moving out of the tiers in the sky until they blocked the sun. The city of Seoul, and soon the whole planet, was plunged into a cold, dark shadow. On the ground, the noise of the city stopped. The cars, the talking, the life, everything went silent, replaced by the deep, terrifying hum of the alien ships. Then the screaming started. A voice spoke. It was not a human voice. It was a low, guttural sound that was broadcast on every television, every radio, every phone screen, and public speaker. The words were translated instantly into every language on Earth. "People of Earth," the voice boomed. "This world is now the property of the Cathar Empire. Your planet is annexed. You will surrender your governments and your armies. You will obey. If you do not surrender, you will be scoured from this world. You have 1 of your hours to answer." In a secret bunker deep beneath the mountains, a man named Park Ji-hoon watched this happen on a large screen. He was a general in the Korean army. His face, usually calm, was like a stone. He did not show the fear that was twisting in his stomach. The bunker was a frantic place. On his screen, the faces of world leaders appeared. They were all talking at once, their voices sharp with panic. "Their ships are everywhere," shouted the American president. "Our satellites are gone," cried the European commander. "We must fight them."
"We have to try,"
said another. General Park Ji-hoon waited for a moment. Then he spoke, and his quiet voice cut through the noise. "Be silent," he said. The leaders on the screen stopped talking and looked at him. "We cannot win a fight in space," Ji-hoon said. "Their technology is too advanced. Our missiles cannot touch them. Our ships are like toys next to theirs. A direct fight would be the end of us all." "Then what do we do, General?" the American president asked, his voice tired. "Surrender?" "No," Ji-hoon said. "We do not surrender. But we will not fight them with our guns. We will fight them with our history." He turned away from the screen of arguing leaders. He walked to a terminal that was not connected to any other network. It was an old machine, made of dark wood and polished metal, looking very out of place in the high-tech bunker. 2 of his junior officers, a young man and woman, looked at him confused. "Sir," the young woman said. "What is that?" "It is not on our system maps. It is older than this bunker," Ji-hoon said. He pressed his hand against a smooth part of the wood. A hidden scanner lit up, reading his palm and the pattern of his veins. A soft chime sounded. "It is called the Gyeongbok Protocol." He typed a code on a physical keyboard. The code was not a word, but a series of numbers and symbols that had been passed down in his family for many, many generations. His father had taught it to him, and his grandfather had taught his father. They were a family of soldiers, but they had another older job. A job of waiting. On the screen of the old machine, a single sentence appeared in elegant, old-fashioned Korean letters. "Is the world in mortal danger?" Ji-hoon typed 1 word. Yes, a new message appeared. "Send the call to the watcher in the stone." Ji-hoon pressed a final key. From the machine, a powerful encrypted data signal was sent. It did not go to any military satellite or army base. It was aimed at a small, lonely science station on the dark side of the moon. Far away on the silent gray surface of the moon, a small building sat near a large crater. This was a geological survey station. Inside, a young scientist named Lee Chae-won was drinking coffee and looking at readings of moon rock vibrations. She was the only person there. A loud, urgent beep came from her main computer. A red light flashed. She jumped, spilling some of her coffee. This was not a normal alert. She went to the computer. The message on the screen made no sense. It was marked with a classification she had never seen before. Yongbok. The message was simple. Rebroadcast attached data packet towards Lagrange point L2. Maximum power. Authorization Park, Lagrange point L2? She muttered to herself. The silence on the moon was absolute. Inside the small geology station, Lee Chae-won stared at her seismometer screen. The line on the graph was no longer jumping with small random vibrations. Now it was drawing a steady, powerful rhythm. Thump, thump, thump. It was like a giant heartbeat coming from deep within the moon's crust. Her coffee was forgotten, cold on the desk. This was impossible. The moon was geologically dead. There were no molten core, no shifting tectonic plates to make a beat like this, yet the machine insisted it was real. The vibrations were getting stronger. A fine dust began to shake loose from the ceiling of the station, drifting down in the low gravity like slow snow. A new alert flashed on a different screen. It was the communication system. The big dish was no longer just sending her strange signal out into space. It was receiving an echo, a powerful one. The echo was not from Lagrange point L2. It was a direct answering signal, and it was coming from the same source as the seismic activity. Something down there had heard her call, and it was talking back. The sound of the echo filled the small station. It was the same deep hum she had broadcast, but now it was layered with new, complex notes. It felt ancient and immense. Chaewon felt a primal fear, the kind that has no reason but is deeply felt. She was alone on the moon, and she had just woken up the neighbor. Back on Earth, the 1-hour deadline passed. The Cathar invasion began in earnest. From the bellies of the giant warships, swarms of drop pods shot down through the atmosphere like falling stars. They crashed into cities all over the world: Seoul, Tokyo, New York, Berlin. In Seoul, the pods cracked open. Out marched the Cathar soldiers. They were tall, with tough chitinous skin like insects. They had too many joints in their legs and carried weapons that glowed with a sickly green light. Their eyes were large and black, showing no emotion. They moved through the streets with brutal efficiency. Their energy bolts melted cars and turned concrete to dust. Human soldiers fought back with bullets and rockets. They were brave, but it was a hopeless fight. The Cathar armor deflected most of the bullets. Their energy weapons cut through human defenses easily. The Cathar commander, a massive warrior named Vork, watched the invasion from his ship in orbit. A holographic map showed him the progress of his forces across the globe. Little red dots represented human resistance. The dots were being extinguished one by one. "They fight with primitive projectiles and chemical explosives," Vork said, his voice a low rumble. "They are disorganized. They are no threat. This world will be ours before their sun sets." One of his officers pointed to a report on the screen. "Their leaders have not surrendered. They continue to broadcast defiance from a hidden bunker." Vork made a sound like grinding stones. It was his version of a laugh. "Let them talk. Their words are as weak as their weapons. They will learn their place." Down in the mountain bunker, General Park Ji-hun watched the live feeds from Seoul. He saw buildings burning. He saw people running. He saw soldiers falling. His heart felt heavy. He had sent the signal. He had done his family's duty. But where was the help? Had the old stories been just lies? He turned to the old wooden terminal. The screen was blank. There was no new message. No sign that the call had been answered. Doubt began to creep into his mind. Had he made a terrible mistake? Had he wasted their one chance on a fairy tale? His junior officer, a young man named Kim Min-soo, approached him. "General, the defense line in the city is breaking. The aliens are heading for the government district." "What are your orders?" Ji-hun looked away from the empty screen. He had to be a general now, not a keeper of old stories. "Order a tactical retreat. Fall back to the secondary positions. Save as many lives as you can." As Min-soo relayed the orders, Ji-hun walked to a small private room connected to the bunker. On the wall hung an old faded tapestry. It showed a scene that modern historians called a myth. It showed human figures standing beside enormous serpentine creatures with wings. They were not fighting. They were standing together, looking at the stars. The title of the tapestry, woven in thread of gold, was "The Oath of the Friends." Ji-hun's grandfather had told him the story. Long, long ago, when humans were young and the world was wild, they had shared the planet with other great beings. These beings, the dragons, were creatures of immense power, born from the heart of the world itself. They were not monsters. They were wise and ancient. A pact was made. The humans would be the keepers of the land, the singers of songs. The dragons would be the guardians of the world's deep magic, the sleepers in the stone. They were friends, but the dragons grew tired. The noise of humanity grew louder. They decided to sleep, to hide themselves deep within the earth and the moon, waiting for a quieter time. But before they slept, they made a promise. If a day came when a great danger threatened the world, The friends could call them. They would wake. They would answer. Ji-hun touched the tapestry. "Please," he whispered. "We called. Where are you?" On the moon, the shaking was getting worse. Lee Chae-won held onto her desk as the whole station vibrated. Alarms were blaring. The seismic activity was off the charts. She looked out the thick window of her station. The gray dust of the lunar surface was shifting. In the distance, near the large crater, the ground was cracking. A fine spray of dust was shooting up into the airless sky like a geyser. Then she saw it. A section of the lunar surface, a whole plain of rock and dust, began to rise. It was not an explosion. It was too slow, too deliberate. It was as if a giant hand was pushing the ground up from below. The rock broke apart and tumbled away in the low gravity, revealing something smooth and dark and impossibly large underneath. It was a scale, a single scale bigger than her entire station. It was a color she had no name for, a deep black that seemed to swallow the light, but with a hidden shimmer like an oil slick on dark water. More of the surface broke away. More scales were revealed. A form was pushing itself up from its ancient bed. It was vast, longer than the largest Cathar warship in orbit around Earth. It was a coil of a body, a tail, the suggestion of wings folded tight against its back. It was a dragon, and it had been sleeping inside the moon. Its head began to rise. It was not like the dragons of European fairy tales. It was more serpentine, more elemental. Its eyes opened. They did not have pupils. They were like pools of molten gold, shining with their own inner light. They looked across the void towards the beautiful blue and white planet that hung in the black sky. The dragon shifted its colossal weight. The movement caused moonquakes that rippled across the entire surface. Chae-won's station lost power for a moment, plunging her into darkness and silence before the emergency lights flickered on. She was trembling, her mind unable to process what she was seeing. The dragon turned its head, and for a terrifying second, one of those molten gold eyes seemed to look directly at her station. Chae-won felt a presence in her mind, vast and old and curious. It was not a voice. It was a feeling, a simple question. Who called? She could not speak. She could only think, her mind screaming with fear and wonder. She thought of the signal. She thought of Earth. She thought of the alien ships. The presence in her mind understood. The dragon's head swung back towards Earth, its gaze fixed on the Cathar Armada, the dark spots swarming around the blue planet. A low, deep thrum passed through the moon, a sound of displeasure that Chae-won felt in her bones. The dragon, the watcher in the stone, was awake, and it was not happy with what it saw. The first thing to break was the silence. On the Cathar flagship, the quiet hum of the bridge was shattered by a frantic beeping. A junior officer stared at his sensor screen, his many-fingered hands trembling. "Commander Vork," he called out, his voice tight with confusion. "I am reading massive energy spikes from the planet." Vork turned from the main viewport where he had been watching his troops advance in Seoul. "More human missiles? They are like insects. Annoying but harmless. No, Commander. Not missiles. The energy signatures, they are not technological. They are biological. And they are enormous." On the main screen, a map of Earth appeared. Little points of red light began to flash in remote wild places. One glowed deep in a mountain range in Asia. Another pulsed from the heart of a vast rainforest. A third shone from under the ice of a frozen continent. They were not the bright, sharp signals of power plants or engines. They were a dull, deep red, like the beating heart of the world itself. Vork felt a strange feeling, one he had not felt in many battles. Unease. "What are they?" he growled. "Unknown, Commander. The scale is impossible. The one in the mountains reads larger than this warship." Down on Earth, the awakenings began. In a hidden valley in the Korean peninsula, the ground shook. The trees for miles around swayed as if in a great storm. Birds took flight in a panic. The very mountain that formed one side of the valley began to move. Rocks and soil and ancient trees slid down its side in a thunderous avalanche. Underneath the dirt and stone, something was revealed. It was not rock. It was smooth and hard and dark, with a color like a black pearl. It was a scale, then another and another. A colossal form, long mistaken for a ridge of the mountain, was uncurling. A head larger than a house lifted from the earth. Two eyes, burning with the light of a miniature sun, opened. It was a dragon. Its name in the old tongue was Umbrian. In the deep, dark waters of a Scottish loch, a whirlpool suddenly formed. The water churned and bubbled. A long serpentine neck covered in slick green scales rose from the center. Its head was elegant and sharp with eyes like blue ice. It let out a silent roar that sent waves crashing against the shores. In the deserts of North America, the sand dunes shifted. A creature of crystalline wings and a body of living sandstone shook off the dust of centuries. It stretched its wings, which caught the sun and threw rainbows across the desert. They were all different, these great beings. They were born from the different elements of the world, but they all shared one thing. They were waking up. They had felt the call, and they were angry. In the mountain bunker, the mood was still one of despair. General Park Ji-hun watched the alien ships continue their attack. The secondary defense lines in Seoul were falling. He had heard nothing. He was preparing to give the order for a full, desperate retreat. Then the bunker shook. It was not an explosion. It was a deep, powerful tremor that came from the earth itself. The lights flickered. A screen on the wall showing a live feed from a satellite went crazy for a second. When it cleared, it showed a thermal image of the Korean mountain range. A massive heat signature was blooming where there had been none before. "What was that?" asked Kim Min-soo, his face pale. Ji-hun did not answer. He ran to the old wooden terminal. The screen, which had been blank, was now glowing with a soft golden light. A single symbol was displayed. It was a complex swirling pattern that looked like a knot. Ji-hun recognized it from the old tapestry. It was the symbol for friend. His heart leaped into his throat. It was not a fairy tale. He turned to his officers. "The situation has changed," he said, his voice strong and clear for the first time in hours. "Hold the lines. Do not retreat. Help is coming." On the Cathar ship, the confusion was growing. The energy signals from the planet were getting stronger. Then the visual reports started to come in from the ground troops. In Seoul, a squad of Cathar soldiers was moving down a wide street, firing their energy weapons at a human barricade. Suddenly, the shadow over them deepened. They looked up. A shape was blotting out the sky. It was not a ship. It had vast, leathery wings. It was the dragon from the Scottish Loch. It flew over the city, its shadow covering entire blocks. It did not breathe fire. It opened its mouth and a blast of supercooled air shot out. The street below and the Cathar soldiers on it were instantly frozen solid into a solid block of ice. In the North American desert, a group of Cathar walkers was searching for the source of an energy signal. The ground erupted in front of them. The crystalline dragon rose from the sand. It did not attack them. It simply moved. Its wing, sharp as a diamond, swept sideways and cut 3 of the giant walkers in half as if they were made of paper. Commander Vork watched the live feeds, his disbelief turning to rage. "What are these creatures?" he roared. "Why are they not in our databases?" "Their biology defies analysis, Commander," the science officer said. "They seem to be part of the planet itself." The main screen switched to a view of the Korean peninsula. The mountain that was Umbrian was now fully revealed. The great dragon lifted its head to the sky. It looked directly at the Cathar ships in orbit. Its molten eyes seemed to burn with a cold fury. Then it moved. It did not fly. It simply vanished from the mountain and reappeared in the sky above Seoul. It was a trick of speed and power that made no sense to the Cathar sensors. It was now hovering over the city, its size making the invading ships look like toys. Umbrian looked down at the chaos. It saw the fires. It saw the fear of the humans, the little singers it had promised to protect. It saw the ugly insect-like aliens scarring the surface of its world. A low sound started to come from the dragon. It was not a roar. It was a deep, resonant hum, the same sound that had been broadcast from the moon. It was a song of power. The sound waves spread out, visible as a shimmer in the air. Where the waves touched the Cathar dropships, their engines sputtered and died. The ships lost control and fell from the sky, crashing harmlessly in empty areas away from the humans. The dragon was not just fighting. It was cleaning. It was removing the infection. In his bunker, General Park Ji-hun watched the screen in awe. He saw the great dragon in the sky over his city. He saw the alien ships falling. He saw the Cathar soldiers on the ground stopping their attack, looking up in terror at this new impossible enemy. He knew what he had to do. It was time to talk to an old friend. He turned to Min-soo. "Prepare my car. I am going to the surface, General. It is too dangerous." Ji-hun pointed to the screen, where the dragon was gently herding the remaining alien ships away from a hospital. The danger is now for them. The black car moved slowly through the broken streets of Seoul. General Park Ji-hun sat in the back, his face calm. Outside his window, the city was a strange mix of war and wonder. Buildings were still on fire from the alien attack. But now people were not running from soldiers. They were standing in the streets looking up at the sky. Their faces were full of shock and hope. Above them, the great dragon Umbrian moved like a living storm cloud. It was huge, blocking out the sun. Its long body coiled through the air as if swimming. It did not make loud roars. It made a deep humming sound that vibrated in the chest of every person below. The dragon was not attacking the city. It was protecting it. Ji-hun saw a group of Cathar soldiers hiding near a broken bridge. The dragon turned its head. It did not breathe fire. It simply looked at them. A wave of invisible force pushed down from the sky. The Cathar soldiers froze in place, unable to move. They were trapped, like insects in hard sap. The car drove to the base of the mountain where the dragon had slept. Ji-hun got out. He told his driver to wait. He walked alone up an old forgotten path. This path was not on any public map. It was a keeper's path. He walked for 20 minutes. The sounds of the city grew quiet below. The air here was clean and cold. He came to a small flat piece of land near the top. The grass was green and soft. In the center of the clearing was a single smooth stone as tall as a man. This was the meeting stone. Ji-hun stood before the stone and bowed deeply. He did not speak modern Korean. He spoke the old words his grandfather had taught him. The words felt strange and heavy on his tongue. "Great guardian," he said, his voice steady, "keeper of the stone and friend to my people, I thank you for answering our call." For a long moment, nothing happened. The only sound was the wind. Then the air behind him grew warm. He felt a presence, vast and ancient. He turned around slowly. The head of the dragon Umbrian was there. It had moved from the city sky to this mountain clearing without a sound. It was so close he could see the fine patterns on its scales. Each scale was like a shield, dark and shimmering. Its eyes were pools of molten gold, looking at him with an intelligence that was older than humanity. The dragon's voice did not come through his ears. It resonated directly in his mind. It was not a sound of words, but a vibration of meaning that he understood. Little keeper. The thought was clear and deep. The line of Park still holds the oath. I remember your grandfather's grandfather. He had the same sad eyes in times of trouble. Ji-hun felt a shiver that was not from fear. The dragon knew his family. It remembered. The oath is recalled, Great One, Ji-hun said, bowing again. The world is threatened by a star-faring scourge. They are called the Cathar. They mean to destroy us and take our world. Umbrian shifted its great head. The movement was like a mountain adjusting its weight. We have slept long, the dragon's thought came. The song of the world was quiet. We felt the call in the stone. It was weak like a whisper, but we heard. The dragon looked towards the city. Now we are awake. The invaders are loud. They scar the song of our world with their noise and their hate. They hurt the little singers. The friends, the little singers? Ji-hun asked. You, Umbrian thought, and there was a feeling of warmth in the thought. You're kind. You sing the deep songs of joy and sorrow. You make art and stories. You care for the growing things. You are the voice of the world. That is why the oath was made. We protect the cradle. We protect the singers. We protect our friends, Ji-hun understood. The dragons did not see humans as masters of the planet. They saw them as its heart, its voice. They were partners, friends. Can you help us? Ji-hun asked. Can you drive them away? Umbrian let out a soft rumble. The air shimmered with heat. It is already done, the dragon thought. The other guardians are waking all across the world. The invaders on the ground are already being quieted. Their machines do not work against the song of the earth. The dragon looked up, its golden eyes focusing on the sky, on the ships in orbit. But the loudest noise comes from there. From the metal nests in the void. They must be silenced. They frighten the singers. Your help is a debt we can never repay, Ji-hun said, his voice thick with emotion. There is no debt. Umbrian thought firmly. There is only the oath. There is only friendship. We do not protect you for a reward. We protect you because you are part of the song. When you are safe, the song will be sweet again. That is our reward. The dragon lowered its head until its giant eye was level with Ji-hun's face. Ji-hun could see his own reflection in the glowing gold. Go back to your people, little keeper. Tell them the old stories are true. Tell them to be brave. The friends are awake. We will watch a while longer. With that, the great dragon Umbrian pulled its head back. It looked once more at the sky, at the Cathar Armada. Its body tensed. Then it pushed off from the mountain with impossible strength. It shot into the sky, faster than any jet. A black arrow aimed at the heart of the invasion. Ji-hun stood alone on the mountain, the wind blowing through his hair. He felt a peace he had not felt since the ships arrived. He looked down at the city. He saw other shapes in the sky now. The serpentine dragon from the loch was weaving between the buildings, freezing whole squads of Cathar soldiers. The crystalline dragon from the desert was a flash of light in the distance. The battle for Earth was not over. But it was no longer a battle for humans to fight alone. They had friends. And their friends were very, very powerful. He walked back down the path to his car, ready to give his people a new kind of order. An order to hope. The command bridge of the Cathar flagship was in chaos. Commander Vork stared at the main screen, his mind refusing to accept what he was seeing. The red dots representing his ground forces were vanishing, one after another. Not just retreating, they were being erased. A live feed from Seoul showed the black dragon Umbrian hovering over the city. Where its shadow fell, Cathar technology died. Energy weapons flickered and went dark. Armor suits locked up, trapping the soldiers inside. The dragon was not attacking with claws or fire. It was simply silencing them. Another screen showed the Scottish Highlands. The serpentine dragon moved through the air like a river of ice. It breathed a mist that froze everything it touched. A whole company of Cathar walkers stood motionless, encased in a glacier that had not been there minutes before. In the American desert, the crystalline dragon was a blur of light. It moved through the Cathar lines, its sharp wings slicing through walkers and tanks as if they were made of paper. It did not seem angry. It seemed efficient, like a gardener pulling weeds. This is impossible. Vork roared, slamming a fist on his console. They are animals. How are they doing this? Commander, a sensor officer shouted, his voice shrill with panic. The biological entities are leaving the atmosphere. They are coming for the fleet. Vork turned to the main viewport. His blood ran cold. The black dragon from Korea was rising from the planet. It moved through the vacuum of space as easily as it had moved through air. It was followed by the ice serpent from Scotland, swimming through the stars. From other parts of the planet, more shapes emerged. A dragon made of swirling rock and magma. Another that looked like living storm clouds crackling with lightning. They were not using engines. They were just flying, defying all known laws of physics. They were creatures of magic and myth, and they were now in Vork's domain, space. All ships. Vork yelled, his voice cracking. Focus fire on the lead creature. Destroy it now. The Cathar Armada, hundreds of warships strong, turned their weapons. 1,000 plasma cannons glowed with green energy. They fired as one. A storm of destructive power shot towards Umbrian, the black dragon. It was enough firepower to vaporize a moon. The dragons did not scatter. They did not dodge. Umbrian moved to the front. It spread its vast wings. They were not wings of skin and bone, but of something darker, something that absorbed the light. The wave of plasma fire hit the outstretched wings and it vanished. It did not explode. It did not burn. It was simply absorbed, swallowed by the darkness of the dragon's wings. Umbrian shuddered for a moment, its scales glowing faintly with the absorbed energy. Then it was still again, its molten gold eyes fixed on the Cathar fleet. The message was clear. Your best weapons are nothing to us. Then the counterattack began. It was not a battle. It was a dismantling. The ice serpent opened its mouth. A wave of absolute cold, a beam of focused entropy, shot towards a Cathar cruiser. The ship's hull did not shatter. It became brittle and gray, all molecular motion stopping instantly. Then as the beam continued, the ship simply crumbled into a cloud of fine, frozen dust. The crystalline dragon flew straight at a destroyer. It did not change course. It passed directly through the ship's hull, its diamond-sharp body cutting the warship into 3 neat pieces that spun away, lifeless and dark. The storm dragon called down lightning that jumped from ship to ship, overloading their power cores from the inside. One after another, Cathar ships flared bright and then went silent. But it was Umbrian who dealt with the flagship. The great black dragon moved through the chaos, ignoring the smaller ships. It flew directly towards Vork's command vessel. Defensive lasers fired, but the beams bent away from the dragon, as if repelled by an invisible shield. Missiles detonated harmlessly against its scales. Umbrian came to a stop just outside the main viewport. It was so close that Vork could see the infinite depth in its golden eyes. The dragon was looking at him. Not at the ship. At him, Vork felt a presence in his mind. It was vast and heavy and old. It was the weight of mountains. It was the patience of continents. It did not speak in words, but in feelings. He felt an image of Earth, beautiful and blue. He felt the simple, joyful songs of its people. Then he felt the harsh, screeching noise of his own armada. He felt the scars his weapons had made on the planet's surface. He felt the fear of the humans. The feeling from the dragon was not hate. It was disapproval. It was the disappointment of a parent finding a child breaking something precious. The presence in his mind focused into a single, clear command. Leave. On the bridge, the lights flickered and died. Every screen went black. The hum of the engine stopped. The flagship was dead in space, powered down completely. They were floating, helpless. Vork stumbled back from the viewport, his body trembling. He was a warrior of the Cathar Empire. He had conquered 12 star systems. He had never known fear like this. This was not a fight against an enemy. This was a force of nature. This was the planet itself telling them they were not welcome. He looked at the other ships on his dead screens, or what was left of them. Half of his armada was already gone, turned to dust or ice or scrap metal. The dragons moved among them, unstoppable and serene. He had come to conquer humans. He was departing, fearing the dragons who called them friends. He found his voice, a dry croak. Signal the retreat. All remaining ships fall back to the edge of the system. Now. It was the only order he could give. It was the only way any of them would survive. The last of the Cathar ships, their engines glowing with a weak and desperate light, vanished into the darkness of space. The jagged holes they had torn in the sky healed, leaving behind only the clean, silent stars. The great armada was gone. On Earth, the silence was strange. For hours, the air had been filled with the sounds of war, the roar of alien engines, the crack of energy weapons, the screams of fear. Now there was only the wind, and the distant sound of fires burning themselves out. In the streets of Seoul, people slowly came out from their hiding places. They looked at the sky. They saw the dragons. The great beings were not leaving. They were settling. The black dragon, Umbrian, coiled itself gently around the peak of Namsan Mountain, its head resting on the stone tower there. It was not a threat. It was a guard. The ice dragon from Scotland landed softly on the Han River, its body resting on the water without sinking, cooling the air around it. The crystalline dragon found a place in a city park, its body catching the morning sun and throwing spots of colored light on the grass. The people were not afraid. They were in awe. They looked at these ancient giants and felt a safety they had never known. General Park Ji-hun stood on a balcony of a building that was still standing. He watched the scene below. He saw a child point up at Umbrian. The great dragon opened one golden eye, looked at the child, and then slowly closed it again. It was a peaceful moment. His assistant, Kim Min-soo, came to stand beside him. The reports are coming in from all over the world, sir. The aliens are gone everywhere, the dragons. They just made them leave. Ji-hun nodded. He looked tired, but a small smile was on his face. They kept their promise. High above on the moon, Lee Chae-won watched from her station. Her screen showed Earth safe and whole. She saw the dragons resting on the planet. She saw the last Cathar ship jump away. She let out a long breath she felt she had been holding for days. A soft chime came from her communication panel. It was a message from Earth, from General Park Ji-hun himself. Ms. Lee, the message said, you did your job perfectly. The call was heard. On behalf of all humanity, I thank you. You can come home now. Chae-won smiled. She typed a short reply. Thank you, General. I am glad I could help. She looked out the window at the gray surface of the moon. She thought about the giant scale she had seen, the one that had risen from the ground. She knew she would never look at the moon the same way again. Back in orbit around Earth, the dragons began to communicate. It was not with words, but with shifts of light and soft humming sounds that traveled between them. They had done what they came to do. The immediate danger was over. Umbrian uncoiled itself from the mountain peak. It rose into the air, a dark shape against the bright blue sky. Every human in Seoul looked up. They watched the great guardian. It flew slowly over the city, its shadow passing over the broken buildings and the grateful people. It was not a victory lap. It was a final check. It was making sure its friends were safe. Then the dragons began to leave. One by one they rose from the planet. The ice dragon became a shimmer of light and faded away. The crystalline dragon dissolved into 1,000 points of light that sank into the earth. The storm dragon turned into a real cloud and drifted apart on the wind. They were returning to their rest. They were going back to their hidden places deep within the earth and the moon. Their job was done. But Umbrian stayed for a moment longer. It flew to the mountain clearing where it had spoken with General Ji-hun. The general was already there, waiting. The dragon landed, its size making the ground shake gently. It lowered its head. The noise is gone, Umbrian's thought came to Ji-hun's mind. The song is quiet again. The little singers are safe. We are safe because of you, Ji-hun said. He bowed deeply. Thank you, Great One. There is no need for thanks, the dragon thought. We protect our friends. That is the oath. There was a feeling of warmth, of fondness. The line of Park are good keepers. You remembered the old ways when others forgot. Will you sleep again? Ji-hun asked. We will rest. We will listen. Umbrian looked at the city below, at the humans already starting to rebuild. The song of your people is changing. It is growing. It is becoming more complex. We will sleep, but we will always listen. If the call comes again, we will answer. The great dragon raised its head to the sky. It spread its vast dark wings. Be well, little keeper. Be well, friends. Sing your songs. We will be watching. With those final words echoing in Ji-hun's mind, Umbrian pushed off from the mountain. It flew up higher and higher, becoming a black speck against the sun. Then it was gone. It did not vanish in a flash. It simply faded away, returning to the stone and the silence from which it came. The world was quiet. The aliens were gone. The dragons were gone, but something had changed. Humanity was no longer alone in the universe. They knew they were not the most powerful beings. They knew they were not the masters of their world. They were the keepers. They were the singers. They were the friends. And they knew that their old, powerful friends were sleeping just beneath their feet, dreaming of the songs they would sing, waiting for the day they might be needed again. General Park Ji-hun stood on the mountain for a long time, looking at the peaceful sky. Then he turned and walked back down the path. He had a world to help rebuild. But he did not feel heavy anymore. He felt light. He had a story to tell. A true story. A story about friends.